Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about weaponized government that fuels dictatorship. Of course, you know what we're talking about. Trump using the full power of the government to go after his enemies, which is a fascist regime methodology. So to start out with, I'm sure everybody's aware that Trump went after Comey and got him charged, which seems dubious in and of itself. I guess we shall see the ramifications of such actions in the news for the next while. What's your take on it, Cal?
I can't imagine how you would shut down a government. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Governments are out there trying to provide services for the people. It makes no sense to shut down the government unless you don't want the people to have services. And I think that's what Trump's all about. He can afford to do whatever he wants. He's making money hand over fist. You know, it's not hurting him. And so he can afford to hurt other people. And I just can't imagine. You get up in the morning, you want to go to work, you find out your office is locked, no budget, no money.
But
I don't know.
but weaponizing the government is like he has to go after Comey, trying to charge him with crimes that are not realistic or provable. There was no crime according to all evidence, and then falsifying documents to get charges laid and firing the Crown prosecutor and replacing it with somebody willing to see the charges filed. Isn't that malicious prosecution? And doesn't that seem like it's vindictive prosecution that has nothing to do with being a president? That would not be within the mandate of presidential work. So that falls outside the protection that the Supreme Court said Trump has. So why isn't there more talk about that in the news? Or am I wrong about that that's not presidential job, is to silence and throw your opposition in jail?
You know, there's nothing presidential about Trump except he walks with like an emperor with no clothes, right? The
Well, I'm glad he's got clothes on because he's sure one ugly motherfucker.
and going after Comey, first of all, he should be congratulating him because he's the guy that blew up the Hillary campaign with those
Yeah.
40,000 emails. Notice nobody, after combing through those emails, found anything that was even
Oh.
remotely scandalous. And as a result, he got, his first shot at presidency. I just can't understand why he's mad at him. It makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, if it does go to trial, it will open up some of the issues on Russiagate. I mean, there are Russia. I think Comey knows all the inside material, and he'll provide the evidence because he has to provide it to protect his lawsuit. So this could be an interesting can of worms for Trump. I don't know enough about the law in the U.S., but it sure sounds like this could backfire on him.
Well, what's even more hilarious is they're going after him for allegedly lying about authorizing a leak of information. Trump lies every time he opens his mouth. It's unbelievable that he would go after somebody for allegedly lying. I mean, there's a guy that can't tell the truth if his life depended on it.
And Trump, yeah, if he went under oath, it's perjury because I think everything out of his mouth will be a lie, and that's perjury. And that leads me to question, the one question I have to ask the American people. If your top elected official represents the justice system and has the power to enforce laws with executive powers, he is the court. He is the lawmaking body of the court. At what point is a judge or lawmaker allowed to lie? It's not, if you lie in that position, you're committing perjury because everything you say represents the highest court or lawmaking body in the land. So why isn't perjury made a big deal of in governments anymore? Those are blatant lies that Trump does, and that is perjury in many cases. And then he uses lies to incite hatred and violence. just like that Kirk did. It's weaponizing lies that should be shut down as perjury and people being held accountable for their position of authority committing the perjury. So that's one question I'd like to ask the American people. Do you feel it's okay for your politicians to lie? Obviously you do, because you elected the greatest liar on earth to run your country. So I guess I answered my own question. I don't want to sidetrack us on weaponization of government, but lies are one of the biggest tools for weaponizing government.
Well, the goofy thing is the lead prosecutor is going to be Trump's former lawyer who has no experience in criminal law, and she just got her job on Monday, and so she's going to be doing the prosecution. These people have to wonder whether, when there's a flip and they're on the other side, will they get prosecuted, for the weaponization of government? And of course, as Pam Bondi, she said, pursuing Comey reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. Well, what about the January 6th riot that Trump started? And the pardons to all those people that smashed up the government buildings and everything else, and people died, and nobody cares. Like, it's,
how do you fix a train wreck like the U.S.? I mean, when a new government comes in, they are going to have to prosecute for all these illegal actions. They're going to have to prosecute thousands of government employees, and they will go to jail. And they're going to cry, "Oh, it's political abuse of power going after us." No, you're breaking the frickin' law. Like, what about the captain of a military ship shooting a missile at a boat full of fishermen? There's accountability. Just because your boss says fire the missile doesn't mean you have the legal right to. I mean, Trump has been given the power of immunity, but you, the people, have not. Anybody under him is going to jail, just like many of his cohorts have gone to jail, like Giuliani supporting him, went to jail. There's all sorts of cases where Trump doesn't go to jail because he's connected with money, power, and now he's got immunity. So Trump has filed over 4,000 lawsuits in his day. And the reason he does that is because only the wealthy can fight a lawsuit. So he just silences everybody by money. And that's empowering a dictatorship when you're giving him the absolute power of the Supreme Court. He now is classing himself as the untouchable. And if anything has taught us, there was a movie called The Untouchables. And in that movie, I think they were all touchable in the end. And that's probably the case for Trump. He will, unless he does a full-scale takeover of government, and there's never, ever another election, him and his family and anybody associated will be charged and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and not given any leeway in those regards after this last run at trying to be a full-blown dictatorship. You got any take on that?
It'll be interesting to see whether the Congress and the Senate flip in the next set of elections here, because he's done all this damage in 9 months. You can imagine,
it's only been 9 months. It feels like a lifetime.
Yeah, and he's got that nut bar behind him, Gorka and that other screwball that looks like Dracula's cousin.
No, it's a shame that this is going on, but it affects Canada. That's why we're talking about it. I mean, the government representative ambassador to Canada was making some pretty wild comments this week as well about Canada, and I think that ambassador should be punted right out of Canada, and Trump should have never been allowed to cross our border as a felon in the first place. And we need to start holding people accountable around the world and other countries where their ambassadors of the U.S. are making wild allegations and lies and trying to create havoc in our government. That's outside influence to our government. And that's got to stop. And the best way to stop that is just not allow an ambassador from the U.S. in Canada. We don't need that crap here, where they're threatening to make us the 51st state. You can kiss my ass, Trump. I ain't being a 51st state, so you're going to have to deal with me sooner or later, I guess, if you come across the border. Just giving you a heads up. I guess that means I'm not allowed in the U.S. anymore because I just said Trump's a meathead. So, oh well.
Yeah, you look at the people that are running the government down there. It's just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the government's going to be shut down here shortly. That's the big take on this. The government's being shut down because they won't. They've been instructed by Trump, the Republicans, not to talk to the Democrats to negotiate any deal to get a couple of votes so they can pass the financing of the government and keep the government open. And Trump did that months ago. And he does not want anything but the government to be shut down. And when you're studying Trump's revenge tactics, he wants revenge on you, the U.S. people, and he wants revenge on anybody that would slight him, like Canada over the Trump Towers deal. We allowed a fraud lawsuit to proceed that shut down his name on some buildings in Canada, and that's why he's out to get Canada. But what I really find interesting, and nobody's talked about this, they needed 218 votes to get I don't even know the procedural name of it, but to get the Epstein files released. They have 218 votes now to get the files released because a newly elected individual is in support of it. So because they have to be, I guess it's called voted in or assigned that they're officially in the government is not going to open up before the government shuts down. They have 2 days of business that they can operate before the shutdown date. And they've said they're not going to open up because then they'd have to confirm this new individual. And once they confirm this individual, they would have to hold a vote on releasing the Epstein files, and they've got the votes to force the release of it. So the cover-up begins. They're not going to open up until after the government reopens some date in the future. They're going for the government shutdown to silence the Epstein file release. And that, folks, should be of concern. I don't know the legal ramifications, but you might know more of that. What happens when the government shuts down in the U.S.?
Well, that's a good question. Do they stop giving you essential services? I don't know. The checks stop going out to, people on pensions.
All the money stops flowing, and
Going to be interesting to see.
Some people still have to work and not receive a paycheck. So that will really bring the country to the knees, and it will get. What I think is going on is Trump knows that when people are going to have to work and they're not going to get paid, they're going to be real stuck-holing to Trump, right? Come on, give us some money, give us some money. And the people that are laid off from jobs can be fired and never brought back from the layoff. So that is a great deal for the Doge thing. And we've seen Trump and Musk together at Kirk funeral, and they were friendly buddy. And I think this could be the pinnacle of the Doge effect, is just shut the government down and lay off all the people and don't bring them back, fire them while the government shut down, and use that as an austerity measure to save the government money and only hire back people that sign waivers or allegiances to Trump. And that could be a reality in the formal necessity of having a dictatorship.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out here whether the military shutdown affects military paychecks. It would be
There's a good one. I bet it does.
It'd be interesting if, you know, what about these guys in
ICE,
ICE? Yeah,
yeah.
are they all of a sudden not going to be out there on the street anymore because they're not, they can't afford the coffee?
Well, my understanding is that when the government shuts down, there's no paychecks for anybody, so ICE wouldn't get paid. And that, folks, is where I'm going to make a prediction. We'll call it a prediction. If you're going to have the desire for a fascist takeover and a total dictatorship, you got to have the Supreme Court backing you, which Trump has. You got to have the silencing of the executive bodies, which he's effectively done because he has majority control of the House and the Senate. And he also has to have the balls to do executive orders in breach of laws, which he has. And the one part that you need to have a full dictatorship is control of the money. Now, he does sort of have control of money with executive orders and et cetera, but, folks, my prediction is this is a planned maneuver to shut the government down because the government, through the Senate and the House, have the ability to borrow the funds and allocate the funds to run government. And when they are shut down, the only person that therefore in position to control the finances of the government is Trump himself as president with executive orders. And if you wanted to have the perfect dictatorship conversion of a pseudo-democratic government, you would put the government in a financial crisis where the president has to step forward and say, hey, I can go to my billionaire friends like Musk and all these billionaires and say, loan the government the money to operate and I'll give you a huge interest rate. So let's say credit cards are 28% interest. So I'm saving the government of the US money by offering 20% return on the money for Musk to step in and give billions to pay the operating expenses of the government. And he can do that by an executive order. So all of a sudden he's going to enrich his friends to give loans to operate the government. Now the government employees are going to be happy because they got a paycheck. And Trump's going to be happy because his buddies are indebted to him for making them lots of money. And now he's taken away the need and control of the finances from the House and the Senate. And that would be the ultimate takeover in a dictatorship, is borrowing money from your buddies instead of borrowing it from the Federal Reserve or however the World Bank operates. And that would be one of the weaponizations of government that Trump could implement with this shutdown of government. And we're going to have to sit back and watch that development. Because if he is successful at loaning money from his friends to pay for the government indebtedness that occurs where essential services have to be paid, then you're going to see some interesting developments. I think that will be the linchpin in never having another election in the U.S. because the finances are now controlled by the oligarchs. The rich control the government, and Trump gave them that power, and he will be rewarded with the kingdom of the United States. That's my prediction, folks. Comments are welcome. What do you think could happen with the financial shutdown and the corruption and the making of money by Trump?
Well,
or am I way out to lunch?
I won't comment on lunch, but
well,
apparently
that's a good meal.
Apparently immigration is considered an essential service, and apparently they're going to pass a special law to keep the military funded, which is probably smart. And even if they do or do not, the military is expected to turn up for duty regardless of whether they're being paid.
Well, that boils down to borrowing money from the oligarchs to pay the military, which means the military is more emboldened and will side with Trump's order to turn on civilians in the country. So if you're being paid by the president, you're going to have allegiance to the president, and that is one of the possibilities of this financial shutdown of the government. That's my take, my guess.
Well, Well, apparently the border patrol has to keep working regardless of whether or not they're going to get paid. So they don't know if they're going to get paid or not at this point. Uh, Quite possibly they will, perhaps they won't. But I wonder if they'll continue to bomb fishermen in the middle of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, that's definitely happening. They
Who,
don't
who's
realize
who's going
that
to buy the fuel?
yeah, well, I guess. Well, they'll just steal it.
Yeah,
Board a couple of fishermen's boats and steal the fuel and the cocaine
yeah.
or whatever they're shipping. I have no idea, but it sure doesn't look good for the U.S. And that was my take of this whole thing. It's weaponizing the government, not only weaponizing to go after your enemies, it's actually weaponizing the government to go after the finances of the government, which has caused a government shutdown and line your own pockets and your buddies' pockets by loaning operation money from your buddies. And that would swing the financial control to the oligarchs, which would be the perfect implementation of a dictatorship and fascism. That's
Well,
my take on it.
it certainly is another distraction away from the Epstein file. You know, if they have to shut down their government in order not to have a vote to release the files, I mean, it's just part of the Trump. I don't know what Trump is worried about, but obviously there's got
There's
to be something in there that's
Well,
and I'm
there is, because Epstein, the author that was going to write a book for on Epstein, was shown by Epstein photographs of Trump with young women topless and wet stains on his crotch area, and those were in his vault or safe in his house. And when the FBI raided, all those pictures that Epstein had to bring forward as sort of control over Trump, he kept in his personal safe. And those files are in, and pictures now are in the FBI hands. And that's been verified by testimony as well. So we know there's more incriminating stuff than that. And I think because he went after Comey, there are definite ties in the Epstein file as to the money going and being directed through Russia back to Epstein, back to Trump, because there's claimed that there's $1.1 billion in transactions between Trump and Epstein. And how would Epstein know about the money laundering of buying estates in his allegations that Trump was broke at the time of that one estate that caused their falling out, and all of a sudden Trump has the money to buy it and then turns around later and sells it for double the money to a Russian oligarch. So there are some dubious documents sitting in the FBI hands. Now, my question is, are those documents backed up? Because I'm pretty sure Trump and his cronies are getting in there and they're burning all the information. They're trying to destroy all information so that there is nothing ever going to come out. They're not just redacting his name, they're literally destroying documents. And that's something you should be concerned about, people in the US, those destroyed documents, because Trump is above the law. All he has to do is walk into the FBI office, say, I'm here to look at the files, grab the files, light a match on them, and he is above the law. He can do that.
well, apparently
Supreme Court.
apparently they have an oversight committee that now received 8,544 records from the Epstein estate, and of
Yes.
course the Democrats released 6 pages which had all sorts of names on them, Trump, Musk, Prince Andrew, etc. And of course the oversight committee accuses the Democrats of only releasing Republican names, and the answer to that would be just release all the files.
Yeah, release all the files.
Yeah,
If that's your
yeah.
problem, that the majority are Republicans, then prove the world wrong and say there's some Democrats in there. Release them too. And that's the point. What's the cover up? And how deep is this cover? If it goes into international countries, that this is going and transferred money through international countries, cannot the United Nations implement charges of a pedophile ring in the U.S.? That's my question. I think they should, because it seems to have international connotation. Even Kirk's wife is alleged to have been involved in a ministry in Romania where young kids, girls, were shipped overseas, and she also was involved in pageants with Trump, and she was also a talent agent or talent producer or something in the allegations. And the Romanian government actually booted her out of there, and she was 17, 18 years old at the time, and there's connections to Trump. So all these things need to come to life. I mean, it's not conspiracy theory when there's leading evidence. It's we need to know the truth and how deep this goes and what in fact was there criminal activity, was there criminal involvement. If you're innocent, you have nothing to hide. Release the file, release the document, follow the money trail. But if you have something to hide, you're definitely going to do everything you can to block the files, hide the files, redact the files, and destroy the files. And I guarantee you, Trump really wants to destroy the files. And he's been given the power to do so and is in probably the process of totally destroying the file. I guess time will tell. That's all I can say.
If you have nothing to hide, don't hide anything.
There you go. And all these distractions and based on predicated lies. And at what point did people start suing the government for, being picked up off the street illegally and thrown in alligator Alcatraz, or your relative just totally disappear off the face of the earth? At what point is the government being held liable for all these actions? I mean, the U.S. is supposed to be about freedoms, and freedoms with the courts allowing you to seek compensation for damages. I could see all these mishaps going on. It could break the U.S. government. Trump is not protected by the Supreme Court on his personal actions. All the billions that he's gained from grifting the U.S. government and the people, he could lose that in multiple lawsuits for his personal actions.
We just go bankrupt. Just go bankrupt again.
Well, he knows how to do it, but his trust fund is never touched in bankruptcy, so he just goes back to being worth a few $100 million, and life goes on. It doesn't affect him because the laws protect his trust account from his daddy, and that's always going to be the case. It's untouchable money, so he doesn't really go bankrupt. He just goes one step back so he can try to repeat the activities again. And he's the master of repeating the same techniques over and over and over again. He's not going to change, especially at his age. I mean, he could barely walk up an escalator. And, like the guy is old and his ideas are antiquated, but he sure knows how to grift, and he sure knows how he wants to be the dictator, because he knows once this government's up, he's going to have to pay the piper unless he can destroy a lot of documents. Somebody's going to hold him to account. But he laughs at the whole U.S. system. He's got away with crimes all his life. And he knows that unless you got big balls, you ain't going to go after him. He's got too many fingers and people owing him favors that have money, and it's a money-based system in the U.S. He who has the money or is friends with all the money gets all the favors, and that's what he's been doing. I mean, look at Epstein. He dealt with all the money people, and what was his favor? A slap on the wrist, and he's supposed to be immune from prosecution. I'm surprised that the state of New York even went after him. So, there's a lot of ramifications in the legal system in the U.S. that money buys the whole judicial system. I guess I don't know what else we want to talk about on the weaponization of government, but it definitely fuels a dictatorship.
Well, it's a good thing it doesn't happen like that in Canada yet.
You haven't been in Alberta for a while there, Sonny.
Well, although some people think, yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. Albertans have been Same techniques that are used in the U.S. and out of Texas. We've been infiltrated. We're called Little Texas for a reason. We've been infiltrated here in Alberta, and I can guarantee you it's getting dumber and dumber and dumber here in Alberta. And it's to the point where, you know, we've got this Premier Smith that's Maple MAGA, and our reputation on a world stage has been hampered because of this decades and decades and decades of repeated stupidity in Alberta. And the foreigners love it because they take all the money and reap all the rewards, and they love influencing our politics here, and they're very good at it. I could go on a big rant for another hour on that, but we'll have some more shows on that. And I don't know what the audience thinks, but I was thinking of doing another podcast with just me in it to fill in time on some of my views, but I'm not sure. You'll have to let me know how that works. I'll try 1 or 2 test runs. If it don't work, we'll stop it. So what else? Hit subscribe, like, let your friends know we're trying to do this on a more regular basis. We take donations over on our Patreon page at Entertainment Talent on Patreon. You can help us help you. It costs money and time to do all these podcasts. We're at 48 now, so we're going to be here for quite a while, and we could sure use your helping hand. We also bring other stuff to you, like our sister channel, Podcaster Comedy. We also have Canadian Culture Dance, which teaches Canadian dance, which is a heritage and cultural aspect of Canada that very few people understand or realize. That we're going to be enlightening you on that. We provide comedy shows, live comedy shows out here in the West. I'd like to take the comedy shows on the road. And we love to promote dancing, obviously. So, anything else?
Well, that sounds like a wrap up.
Yeah, I ranted on. We're good.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys take care. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.